Good evening. My name is Brad Cooper, and I'm honored to act as the moderator for this evening's events. Having lived in Ladner for the last 20 years with my wife Teresa and our 4 children, policing in our community has been very important to us. As the past president of the Ladner Business Association, the safety of our businesses has been equally important. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to learn and understand the differing ideas on policing in our area. I would like to add that Gregor Robinson, Mayor of Vancouver, Rob Gordon from SFU Criminology, all councillors, all police boards in the area have been invited this evening. And we wanted to make sure that this in no way looked like it was a closed forum. Thank you for coming out tonight to discuss this very important topic, public safety in our communities. Policing in the Metro Vancouver area is a combination of municipal, independent police services and RCMP contract policing. And over the last 30 years, there's been much discussion about the model of policing in the Lower Mainland and whether or not it delivers an efficient and effective police service. It has been described as a patchwork quilt, with every municipality in the region policed independently of one another. Some people see this as a hindrance, while others see it as an important aspect to community-based policing, that every community is policed based on its own specific needs. Some people see it as fragmented, and others believe police in separate jurisdictions are far from fragmented, that police do work well together between jurisdictions. The goal for tonight is not to solve the problems surrounding the current model or to come up with a strategy to create a regional force. What we are doing here is giving proponents of both community-based policing and regionalization an opportunity to speak on the issue to you, the public, to help all of us understand the complexity around policing models. Sir Robert Peel, recognized as the father of modern policing, stated, "The police are the public and public are the police." It is on this basis that we meet here tonight to allow the public an opportunity to listen and ask questions of a panel of experts. Our Delta Police Board and Delta Municipal Council are present tonight for this discussion. Thank you for being here and for your contribution to public safety in Delta. So I'd like to introduce our panel, starting at the far end, Vancouver Police Deputy Chief Doug Lepard, and then our Chief Administrative Officer George Harvey, and the Mayor has been detained and is on her way. Delayed? Detained. Well, maybe she's getting a special escort in. I'm not sure here. The Honourable Wally Opal QC, Commissioner of the Missing Women Commission of Inquiry and Delta resident. Okay, RCMP Assistant Commissioner Norm Lipinski. And the Delta Chief of Police Jim Sassford. I would also like to thank city representatives, mayors and councils and police chiefs from other jurisdictions for being here tonight as well. This topic affects all of us in the region, so it is good that we can all be here together to discuss it. We're going to start by listening to each panel member discuss regionalization from their point of view. After that, there will be an opportunity to ask questions of the panel. Anytime throughout the evening, you can first, or email a question to questions@deltapolice.ca. Your Worship.
Excuse me, I'm late.
There's no
She
detention
still has
tonight.
the handcuff marks on her wrist, I'll bet. She's detained.
The second way of getting a question to us is to tweet your questions to @DeltaPolice. Or if you choose to write down a question, the ushers in attendance will assist you. And the ushers are, if you put your hands up, they're at the back of the room. And finally, there is an opportunity for you to ask a question directly at the microphone. And we will have a wireless microphone available. We'll do our best to address everyone's questions, and to do so, we will select a wide variety of questions. If your question is not answered here tonight, Delta Police staff will be posting frequently asked questions on the Delta Police website in the coming days. There you will find a high-level overview of the discussion along with answers to questions from the public. If you tweet a question and it is difficult to answer it in 140 characters, it too will be posted and answered on the Delta Police Department site. So to begin the discussion, I would like to invite the Honourable Mr. Wally Opal QC, Commissioner of the Missing Women Commission of Inquiry. Commissioner Opal has dedicated his entire working life to improving social justice and community safety. He was born in Vancouver, Fraserview neighborhood, attended law school at UBC, and then practiced law for 14 years. He was Crown Counsel and Defense Counsel in numerous high-profile criminal cases. Commissioner Opal was appointed to the County Court of British Columbia in 1981 and to the Supreme Court of British Columbia in 1985. In 2003, he was appointed to the British Columbia Court of Appeal. Commissioner Opal served as Attorney General and Minister responsible for multiculturalism from 2005 to 2009. He has recently been appointed to the Board of Directors of the Dr. Peter AIDS Foundation and is currently the Chancellor for Thompson Rivers University. He was appointed Commissioner of the Missing Women Inquiry and has, throughout his career, promoted and recommended a regional policing model for the Lower Mainland. Commissioner Opal.
Thanks very much. When I was first asked to appear here, I was asked if there was anything I needed, and I said protection. So thank you for holding this forum, and hopefully it'll be a good exchange of ideas. I want to say at the outset that I'm going to tell you what we found during the course of the inquiry and what recommendations we made as a result of the inquiry. It's for the people who make the political decisions to decide this important question, and I'm not going to get involved in any of the political discussions, pro and con. I must say that I'm somewhat surprised at the amount of attention that's been paid to the regional policing issue. I say that because in British Columbia, because across the country, our report, 1,448 pages, received accolades. It dealt with the violence against women, dealt with the women who were murdered, why they were murdered, what policing deficiencies there were in the crimes that resulted in their deaths. Here, that part of the discussion about how to keep women safe, how do we look after vulnerable women, has been ignored virtually. Instead, we're focused here on regional policing. How do we preserve our present system? There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, regional policing has been a major issue here in British Columbia, but I have some concerns that the violence against women issue has not really been discussed in British Columbia at all. Now in September, I was appointed to conduct an inquiry into these issues, that is missing and murdered women, what happened during the Picton investigation, why did so many women die, what kind of policing took place. And I have to tell you that nothing I did previously ever prepared me for what I did during the course of the inquiry. It was the most difficult job that I had because we were dealing with the greatest mass murderer in Canadian history. Picton admitted killing 49 women. The conventional wisdom is he killed probably close to 100. And these were women who were poor, drug-addicted, sex trade workers, Aboriginal. And we as a society didn't care about them enough to be concerned. And that's the shame of what happened here. So we conducted an inquiry over 2 years. We had 93 days of public hearings. We had 85 witnesses. We did the North, the Highway of Tears. We went into the communities. We probably dealt with 150,000 pages of police documents. We started with when women first started going missing in the late 1980s and how those missing women escalated into the 90s, and how in 1997 they sort of reached a peak. And the tragedy is that none of us really cared about them. That's the real tragedy. And our findings at the end of the day were that while there were critical police failures that resulted in the deaths by virtue of untimely investigations, we were all indifferent as a public to their deaths, primarily because They were poor, they were Aboriginal, they were drug addicts, and we didn't care enough about them as a society. So when we did, at the end of the day, when those were our major findings, that is critical police failures and the lack of any kind of public interest. The media was the only people that really got involved in what was going wrong with the women. I mean, in 1991, there were 26 women missing. In 1997, that number had escalated. In 1997, there was something like 12 more women went missing. And there were no signs of where they were. And when I talk about critical police failures, the one that sits at the top, in my view, after listening to all the evidence, the expert evidence, most of all, listening to the families, listening to heart-wrenching evidence about women who went to the police to complain about missed loved ones and the treatment that they received, and the lack of information that went from one police force to another. The regional policing issue came to the forefront. And there's no doubt in my mind that had there been a regional police force, one police force with one commanding post, that a lot of women would have been saved. There's no doubt in my mind. And I'm going to give you about 3 examples. There are lots. In March of 1997, at the height of the missing women's numbers, the Picton picked up a sex trade worker on the 23rd of March, 1997, and from the downtown east side, he took her out to his farm in Port Coquitlam, and they agreed on a sex act. And after the act took place, an altercation developed, pursuant to which he stabbed her. She stabbed him too, but she almost died. She was, in fact, she was declared dead twice on the operating table at Royal Columbian Hospital. The next day, she was interviewed by the RCMP. She told the police that Picton told her that she went to the downtown east side of Vancouver once a week to pick up women. And also that there were condoms there at a Picton farm. There was women's clothing, women's hairbrushes, and there was apparently a bra on the back of his truck that didn't belong to her. She said to the police who were interviewing her the following day, "I knew there had been broads on this property." Women were going missing. She surmised, quite correctly, that the women were coming to their deaths out here, that is, out in Port Coquitlam. That information concerning the link to the downtown east side was never conveyed to the Vancouver police. Now, if Vancouver police at that time were investigating missing women, had they been told at that time from the RCMP that there had been a direct link, Picton would have been the obvious candidate, the obvious suspect at that time. That's a classic example where you have 2 different police forces with different priorities. And I don't necessarily fault the RCMP, because the RCMP had different priorities. The Vancouver police by that time had definite priorities of pursuing the issues regarding missing women. But while the women were going missing in Vancouver, they were being murdered over in Coquitlam. That's one example. The second example that I can think of was the RCMP had an officer named Connor, a very conscientious, excellent police officer who had conduct of the Picton file in 1999 by the time Picton had become a suspect. He was working with a detective constable named Laurie Schenner. They were working together on the Picton file. So Connor gets promoted, and he wants to work on the Picton file. The RCMP say, "No, you're promoted. That file will go somewhere else." The file sat there for 2 years. Well, nothing happened to it. More women went missing. And meanwhile, there was this, while the officers on the street worked well together, the management of the 2 respective police forces did not necessarily work together, primarily because they had different priorities. And again, that's normal where you have different police forces in different jurisdictions. So when I say that he was transferred and he had to drop the file, that reminds me of what happened in Olson. Because in Olson in 1981, there were a whole bunch of transfers within the RCMP. The files languished. Meanwhile, the Olson investigation was characterized by the Delta Police, the Burnaby RCMP, New Westminster, Vancouver, and a number of different police forces that were working together, apparently, but they were not sharing information. In fact, during the course of our inquiry, we looked at the Olson investigation, the Green River Killer, Ted Bundy, Charles Manson, the Yorkshire Killer, Paul Bernardo. They all had one common characteristic: systemic failures. Police forces and institutions not working together. And that was a fatal flaw. And these people exploited, the offenders exploited those divisions of authority between the various policing agencies. A woman named Marnie Frey from Campbell River, on August the 30th, 1997, left to go to Vancouver. She was a sex trade worker, a drug addict. She was noted missing on the downtown east side by her parents, who did not hear from her. They went to the Campbell River RCMP, and they went a number of times according to the evidence that they gave before me. But Marnie Frey was not on the missing persons list until December of that year. So something happened in the communications between the Campbell River RCMP and the Vancouver police. So those are two examples of where that took place, where there was a failure to conduct sort of a coincidental, concurrent investigation. And I already mentioned that after a failed interview in 2000, January 2000, the Picton file was dormant, again, because of different priorities. Project Even Handed was started. It was a joint forces operation, came to fruition. They didn't have the Picton file. They didn't even get the Picton file. In fact, the Picton was arrested by an officer, a relative rookie, 18 months experience, Nathan Wells, who was looking for weapons. And he got a search warrant, went to the Picton farm, executed the warrant, and saw all this Serena Abbott's Ways inhaler, panties, condoms, all of this stuff. Picton didn't make any kind of effort to hide anything, you know. There were frozen heads in his deep freeze. You looked at the frozen meat that was had women's DNA on them. And there was no surreptitious efforts on the part of Picton. So had there been a cooperative policing at that time, that we would have apprehended Olson a lot earlier, or Picton a lot earlier, and a lot of lives would have been saved. Now, I'm somewhat surprised that before I get into that, we went through the inquiry, and we had Chief Constable Jennifer Evans of the Regional Police of Peel Regional Police from Ontario. She and two other officers came, and they were seconded to the inquiry because this issue of missing women is a national issue. So she did an independent review for us, and she concluded that without doubt that had there been one police force, Picton would have been apprehended much earlier. Many expert witnesses who testified before us said the same thing. Kim Rosmo, Dr. Kim Rosmo, one of the foremost authorities of policing in North America, clearly gave the same opinion, that had there been one police force, lives would have been saved. Now, having said that, I understand the concerns that municipalities and cities have of having their own police force and the need for and the demand for community-based policing. You can still have community-based policing and have a regional police force. You can have both. And it has been many places. New York's a classic example. New York has got a regional police force, but they do an excellent job of community-based policing by having officers walk amongst the public in Manhattan. When I was the Attorney General, we established the community court. We went to New York. We looked at their community court. And there was a case there where they eliminated as many silos as possible. And they did that by having community-based policing, but they have a regional police force. So you can have both. I know that's always a fear in municipalities such as Delta that receive an excellent type of policing, a policing that the public wants. But I think we need to understand that those two concepts in principles are not mutually exclusive. I want to say something else too. That I get somewhat disturbed about some of the glibness that has been portrayed by some of the comments where everything that we did in our 2 years, 1,400 pages, should read it. It needs to be read. And it sort of gets dismissed by officers who come out and say, well, we don't need regional policing. We're okay with what we have. We have all these integrated teams, and that's all we need. But I would recommend that you read the report, look at our recommendations. You may disagree with them. I'm not asking you to buy into what we said, but I can tell you that that we made the recommendations based on the logical evidence that I had before me. And I sweated over this for a long time, and we worked long and hard hours. And so those are my views. I look forward to the comments made by, that will be made by other people here. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Our second speaker this evening is Mayor Lois E. Jackson. A longtime resident of North Delta, Lois E. Jackson has served as Delta's mayor since 1999 and previously as a councillor when she was the first woman elected to that position in 1973. In addition, she serves as the chair of the Delta Police Board. Previously, Mayor Jackson served as the chair of the Metro Vancouver Board of Directors from 2006 to 2011 and as chair of Metro's Regional Committee on Policing Issues. Mayor Jackson has received much recognition over the years, including a 25-year Public Service Award from the Union of BC Municipalities, Queen Elizabeth II Golden and Diamond Jubilee Medals for Outstanding Community Service, the Paul Harris Fellow Award from the Rotary Clubs of Ladner and North Delta, and an Award of Excellence by the BC Emergency Preparedness Conference for demonstrated leadership at the local and regional government level in supporting emergency management. Mayor Jackson's civic leadership includes collaborating with all levels of government on key projects and initiatives to help build a safe and economically vibrant community. Mayor Jackson.
Thank you, Brad. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I do want to recognize Councillor Scott Hamilton that's here tonight. Are there any other? Oh, Bruce McDonald is here. Thank you. Yes, Ian Payton, Councillor Payton's at the back. Are there any other councillors here? I see all the police board is at the back of the room there, so put up your hands. Thank you so much all for being here. You know, ladies and gentlemen, as Mayor of Delta and Chair of the Delta Police Board, I'd like to welcome each of you this evening. As you may all realize, there are 5 municipal city police departments in the Lower Mainland, comprised of West Vancouver, New Westminster, Port Moody, Vancouver, and Delta. The remainder of the Metro Vancouver area is policed by the individual yet collective forces of the RCMP. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my responsibility to ensure that the citizens of Delta are well served by an accountable, accessible, innovative, dedicated, and transparent police force. Part of doing this job is making sure that the policing model which we choose works for Delta and for our families and our residents. This is what the 125th anniversary of the founding of the Delta Police Force, and I must state that I'm extremely proud of the men and women of the Delta Police Forces. The record of our members serving the people of Delta is something in which we can all take pride. Our delivery of police services is second to none in the province and indeed across this country and beyond. In a recent Ipsos Reid survey, Delta residents reported a 94% satisfaction rate with our Delta Police Department. Therefore, it is clear that the community and the people of Delta are very supportive of its police department. This rating comes from hard work, each and every day, of the sworn members, civilian staff, and volunteers that work to keep Delta safe. The Delta Police Board, I think all of whom are here tonight, are highly committed in their role as board members. And you may ask, what is the role of the police board? Well, the police boards are governed by the Provincial Police Act, and in part, the Act requires that the board establish a budget, oversee policy, act as a governance body, and hire the chief constable. The board meets with the chief and his senior staff on a monthly basis, as we did this morning, and the members are highly engaged in the day-to-day functioning of the department, looking for ways to institute crime prevention policies as required by the community. We are kept informed of all operational actions taken by the force through the chief constable, who is in charge and responsible for all operations. In Delta's case, we have 6 board members. We have 5 which are appointed by the provincial government. 1 is appointed by the local council. Each member may serve a maximum of 6 years. And all of the police board activities are reported through to the Solicitor General's Department on a monthly basis. So as chair of the police board, I witnessed firsthand the work of our police department at work in the community. Whether it is a lost child, a break and enter in progress, a murder on a cold, dark night, our police members are intelligent problem solvers. Hundreds and hundreds of hours are spent interviewing and finally hiring and choosing each individual member of our force. I believe strongly that each member does sweat the small stuff. It has been said recently by those who I will remain nameless that the no call too small philosophy works for the smaller departments like Delta, but not for the big cities. Well, I personally take exception to that comment, and I will quote from, and I appreciate the comments earlier about the former mayor of the city of New York, Rudy Giuliani, when he stated, and I quote, "We have to sweat the little things, because if we don't, they turn into big things." He believed that if you take care of property crime, the mischief, the bullying in the schoolyard, the broken windows, if you take care of the graffiti, the transit fare evaders, that those issues would solve the bigger problems. And ladies and gentlemen, I've been chair of the police board, as mentioned, for 14 years now, and a councillor before that. And the former mayor of the great city of New York City is right. Why? Because New York City went from being one of the most dangerous cities in the world to being one of the safest cities in the world. Giuliani gave New York City Police Department 1,000 additional police resources with a caveat. And he wanted to know what every one of those officers was doing. And he wanted a cop in every corner, and he wanted them accountable to the public on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. And it worked in New York City. I know what every single police officer is doing. I know by name who is on sick leave, who is seconded to outside agency, and who works in which sections. I can tell you at any moment how many men and women we have on the road, in the office, and what they did yesterday. That is what Giuliani recognized. Individual officers in one huge central agency become lost in the maze. Officers lost in the maze are not accountable to those they serve outside of the agency.
So I believe we've proven that the no call, too small approach to a community policing really works, and each person in Delta who needs a police officer will get one at their door. And there are many areas in the Lower Mainland when police will not come unless it is a major issue or a major crime which has taken place. How can we, with that model, track what's going on in our community? How can you analyze where the police resources must be placed to identify the problems? All calls and circumstances are tracked in Delta. You can quickly tell where to place your emphasis on an ongoing basis, even in some cases, being able to predict not only when the next occurrence will take place, but who to look for. A huge advantage to the taxpayer in Delta is that the Police Board and Delta Council have total control over the police budget and spending. Policing does not come cheap, but with that funding comes the highest of expectations by the residents of Delta, and those expectations translate into results, with Delta ranked as the 35th safest of 100 largest communities in Canada. That is why people love to come to live in Delta. They feel safe here. If they don't, they know they call Mayor Jackson or they call Chief Sessford, and they know that action will be taken. And you can turn on a dime here in Delta. And I remember several years ago we were having a lot of break and enters in East Sector in North Delta, and I took that problem to our council, and the next day we had approval for 4 new officers to work that zone. We dealt with that problem immediately, and we solved the problem. Not only do we expect Delta Police to maintain law and order, we expect them to work in partnership with Delta's other municipal departments and services. Delta Police do not work alone when it comes to public safety. The police and municipal departments function through integrated service teams that work together to solve problems before they become a public safety issue or allow for criminal activity. Our police work with the Delta Engineering Department, the fire departments on traffic issues and safety investigation problems, Delta Parks and Recreation to investigate vandalism, safety in our public facilities, our bylaw enforcement staff in identifying problems with property. I was going to say hotel zoning, but I won't say that. Identifying locations of local grow-ops, and Delta Police is a no-call, too small police department. But in reality, ladies and gentlemen, the Corporation of Delta is a no-call, too small organization, and our taxpayers and commercial business owners deserve and expect it. There's no line and there's no barrier between the municipal police force and our other governmental and firefighting staff. We all work as a team. Transparently, we analyze each situation and arrive at collective solutions. We solve problems. A regional police force would not have the ability to offer the same level of customer service to the citizens of Delta. It has been proven over and over again that we are extremely well served by our forces, and I intend to make sure that not only that it stays that way, but that we are all on alert to ensure that it continues to improve and probably change. While I am not shy about bragging when it comes to the work of the force, I will not stand here and tell you that policing in Metro Vancouver is perfect. It is not perfect. It is not perfect in Delta or Vancouver or Port Coquitlam, or it's not perfect in the RCMP either. Grave mistakes were made. You heard Mr. Opal speak about the tragic circumstances surrounding that investigation. There were a lot of flaws in the system that fostered that tragedy. And yes, there are still flaws in some of the current systems. But ladies and gentlemen, as elected leaders from all levels of government, as police chiefs, city and school board managers, police board members, and yes, even the academics, it's our responsibility to work together to identify the problems and then to solve them. That is exactly what we do here in Delta, where our motto is honor, integrity, courage, and trust. And we teach this to our children. And we were called, we will recall that we put together a community meeting 3 days after the Laura Zendry murder. in North Delta. Chief Sesford and I and other members of the senior staff stood shoulder to shoulder in front of about 500 people, and we let them know what we could. We tried to make some sense out of what that senseless killing was to one of the most beautiful children in our area, and people were frightened. They were all frightened what was going to happen with our community and their children. Do you know what I told our people? All those people that were standing there. If you see something that doesn't look right on your street or in your neighborhood or at the park, if you see something that just doesn't fit, call us. Call somebody. Call me. Call Chief Sesford. Call George Harvey. Call somebody. Why? Because I can't do it all. Sesford and Harvey can't do it all. And I said, we are all here together to help you. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is community policing. The Delta Police Force solved that murder, a brilliant piece of police work, and I speak with great confidence when I say that that arrest, I am sure, would not have happened if we had had a regional police force. Our officers knew the area. They knew the kids in the playgrounds. They knew where the troubled houses were. They knew what great, innovative, and investigative skills that they had. Because our officers work, live, and play, by and large, and remain in Delta. They know what's going on in the street, and many thousands of hours were put in by those officers, and they stuck with it until they got that amazing arrest. Do I believe a large regional force is the solution? No, I do not. While we have heard from Mr. Opal that there is evidence to suggest a regional police force would have stopped a serial killer working in downtown East Side, I believe there is so much more that remains hidden. I am not sure that we will ever really get to the and pinpoint the causes. But I sincerely want to thank Mr. Opal, and I hope we all do in this room, for working so diligently and with determination in trying to get to the bottom of what happened those many years ago. But regionalization will not stop the marginalization of women, and Mr. Opal mentioned that as well. And it is not going to stop violence against women. Regionalization will not create leaders, nor leadership in our communities, nor in our police members. Proper accountability and governance will not be guaranteed through a regional police force. And frankly, I get tired of people who say that it's just politics. This issue is about serving the people that we represent. It's about what Sir Robert Peel talked about so many years ago. As seen in other jurisdictions, regionalization will not ensure increased productivity, decrease costs, nor will it improve service delivery. Based on the comments from other municipalities, a regional force will likely not sweat the small stuff. It seems to me that regionalization is seen as a panacea for all that is wrong with policing in our region, and it has been hailed by some as the solution to the problems that we have experienced. Ladies and gentlemen, do you realize how much policing has been transformed since that time, since the 1990s? It has dramatically changed, even while I've been mayor. And in 2000, a lot of people didn't even know what a grow-op was, if you can believe it. Today, police have extraordinary resources at their fingertips that allow for seamless communication between jurisdictions. All levels of government have invested in policing to make this happen. The BC provincial government invested some $14 million in ECOM and in PRIME. That acronym for PRIME is Police Records Information Management Environment for British Columbia. And the federal government invested millions in the task force for the RCMP. PRIME was developed and implemented by the provincial government as a common information database shared between every police agency in the province. Files generated in Delta can and are seen from Vancouver to Prince George to Kelowna in real time. Details of all incidents are available to all officers, no matter if it's RCMP, Vancouver City, Delta, or Abbotsford. Because of PRIME, chronic and serious offenders cannot hide. They cannot hide from the police because of jurisdictional boundaries. And another example mentioned, of course, was ECOM, where each community has a representative on the board. And again, the provincial government invested in the wide area radio network, a shared radio system used throughout Metro Vancouver so that all agencies can communicate on consistent channels with the same equipment. Ladies and gentlemen, these are powerful law enforcement tools. These weren't available in the 1990s. You could have a stolen car in Whistler, and you had to hand that stolen car over to Lions Bay and West Vancouver and Vancouver and Richmond and Delta and Abbotsford. Today, that doesn't happen. We have a seamless communication system. Communications and intercommunications amongst all officers in the province has changed, not only in policing methods and in technology innovation, but in advancements in analytical and service investigative skills. In the 1990s, with the communications problems of the day, perhaps regionalization seemed to be the answer to the communications problems. I don't think that's true today. We have moved far beyond that method of policing. Crime has become more complex. As a result, police agencies have changed the way they do business, and they integrate, they communicate, they work together on the ground. The Vancouver Grey Cup riots, they illustrated that, with Delta, for instance, having 50 police officers on the ground that night. Mr. Opal's extensive body of work in the Missing Women's Commission of Inquiry yielded 63 recommendations. And it's my hope that his work of the inquiry is not lost in the shadow of the distraction of regionalization debate. And Mr. Opal, I'm really happy we agree on that, because, you know, we have to look for some real change and what will occur as a result of the outstanding body of work that you, sir, have performed. So let us not water down the important work that has been so vital to the members of the families who are left to grieve. We are placing a great deal of effort in single recommendation, and I think that we should be reanalyzing that. Ladies and gentlemen, when the City of Vancouver announced a couple of weeks ago that they were in favor then, now, of regionalization, I had to ask why, and I continue to ask why, and that's probably why we're here tonight, and this is a good thing. I don't believe that bigger is better, as they proved in New York City, and I'm also told that they didn't prove that either in the regionalization in Ottawa, Toronto, or Halifax. My job as mayor and the chair is to take care of Delta and represent our people. While I believe we can and will always work together very hard to improve our police services, a large regional model does not suit this community. It is my hope that as a result of this dialogue, all of us here tonight will be better prepared to be determined to work together to improve policing in Delta, in Vancouver, in Surrey, and all other parts of the Lower Mainland. There is a lot of work to be done. Policing is a community and public issue. People want to be able to have faith in those that protect them. They want to have confidence in the service for which they pay. They want to know that crime prevention is being done and is a top priority for our schools, for our streets. People want to feel safe. So let's get on with this job. I believe that on behalf of the members of the Delta Municipal Council and all our staff, on behalf of the Police Board and the Delta School Board, I really want to publicly thank the Delta Police Department for all that they do to serve us and protect us. We have made an ongoing investment in our police here in Delta, and this is ultimately an investment in public safety for all of our communities. And may I finally thank Mr. Opal and all our other table guests. I'm very much looking forward to comments from them here tonight. It is a great time to have a dialogue on this topic, and I think it's far overdue, and I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Jackson. Our next panel speaker is George Harvey, CAO, the Corporation of Delta. George Harvey, a longtime resident of South Delta, was appointed Chief Administrative Officer for the Corporation of Delta in 2001. Before this appointment, Mr. Harvey was employed with the City of Burnaby, where he served over 30 years in a number of positions, including Deputy City Manager, Director of Human Resources and Manager of the Environmental Health Department. Mr. Harvey has a BA in Economics from Simon Fraser University, an Administrative Management Special Certificate, and he holds a Master of Business Administration, a degree and Bachelor of Laws degree. Hang on, somebody moved my papers here.
That's okay, I didn't do all that, but you can keep talking about it.
You weren't that person. Environmental Health Diploma of Technology from the British Columbia Institute of Technology. He also studied Advanced Management at Dalhousie University. As Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Harvey provides leadership to all departments to ensure they meet their responsibilities and that Council's directions and policies are carried out. He was recently awarded the 2012 Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. George.
Good evening, everybody, and I feel very privileged to be able to speak tonight with regards to a subject that I feel very closely to, and of course, that subject being regional policing. My own background, I say I have about over 42 years of local government service now. Being a deputy city manager in Burnaby, one of my responsibilities was working with the RCMP. Before that, I worked on licensing. I was in charge of licensing. I've seen the positives insofar as working with being a police officer. I've seen some really sad cases too. I have nothing but respect for the police officers that protect all of us. Now, the report of the Missing Woman Commission of Inquiry, and of course it was released in December of last year, is highly critical of the existing policing model, the police handling of the case, and points to lack of coordination between the Vancouver Police Department and the RCMP as a key factor in the failure to apprehend serial killer Robert Pickton sooner. As Mayor Jackson mentioned, and others will, the report contains 63 recommendations, including the one we're here to talk about tonight. That is the creation of a single regional police force for Metro Vancouver. Now, this recommendation, as we all know, has become focused in the media, reigniting the long-standing debate, and this has been around for a number of years over amalgamation of our police services, and prompting a number of Metro Vancouver mayors to speak publicly in support and against regionalization. Now, Delta, we have a long, successful history of community-based policing. And of course, Delta has been steadfast in speaking against any regionalization of our police forces. Now, when you look at Delta, as Mayor Jackson mentioned, I'm sure Chief Sessford will also, we're very strong on community-based policing. And it's worked tremendously for Delta over the years. And it's based upon a philosophy that police officers and citizens work together in creative ways to solve community problems relating to crime, the fear of crime, public disorder, and social decay. Now, in Delta, I see this happening all the time, which is a really great motivating factor for us that work in Delta, working with our police department. They're not just a police department, they're part of our team. And when there's problems in our community, as it happened just a few weeks ago, our school board previous chair requested a meeting with the Mayor Jackson, Chief Sessford, and myself to talk about a problem in one of our high schools. And within an hour, we had an action plan. We dedicated resources. We actually pulled in some members of our Parks and Recreation Department in order that we can work with some of the youth problems that the school board and the police chief were saying we need attention to. And as Mayor Jackson stated, we turned that situation around on a dime, and we can do that. And that's because we have our own police department and we have community-based policing. Jim can pick up the phone at any time, phone the mayor, phone my office. We can work on problems together. And we work on budgets together, too, at a community-based policing model. And as Mayor Jackson said, and we all know, policing is expensive. And we have to ensure that we can fund policing along with Parks and Recreation, along with the fire department, along with our other services, because they're all important to sustain a healthy, safe community. One of the things that I've seen over the years with community-based policing, it reduces the social distance between citizens and the police to create familiarity and trust. Our school liaison officers, the ones that are in elementary school, my children went through the Delta school system, and they're in their late 20s now. They still stop and talk to that police officer that they met when they were first going to school. That police officer usually is coaching teams in our community. He's usually living around the corner or within the community area. That's the advantage of our police department. It's also important in community-based policing that it revitalizes the community again, by looking at a variety of things. It problem solves. It just doesn't suppress. The no to call too small, which I hear from other city managers as being, well, you're spending far too much money. It's too expensive. You shouldn't be doing it. As Mayor Jackson said, you don't look after that no call too small. You don't look after all those calls. It leads to larger problems. We need to maintain that type of philosophy. And of course, community-based policing, as it is in Delta and other community-based policing models, it encourages community involvement. And you look at our volunteers, you look at our police board, it's a great model and it's working effectively. Now, I always look at, okay, what are the outcomes? Well, the outcomes, when you look at Delta and other community-based policing models, is positive. And we're a very safe community. We do about every 3 years a citizen satisfaction survey. The police department gets in the 90s. Administration, not so well for us. But the police department is always up very high insofar as our citizens are happy. And when you look at regional policing, has anybody really thought about what the model and what the actual outcome would look like? I did some quick additions the other day. If we had regional policing in Metro Vancouver, excluding Abbotsford, you're looking at, sorry, Bob, you're looking at 3,000 members, sworn members, 3,000. Along with that, you usually have a ratio of a civilian for every policeman between 1 to 3 or 1 to 2. So you're looking at another 1,000 to 1,500 civilians supporting those 3,000 officers. 3,000. I do a lot of negotiations. I really enjoy negotiations, but I would not want to sit across the table from somebody representing a bargaining unit composed of 3,000 police officers. Now, if the regionalization happened, there would be one collective agreement for those 3,000 police officers. And it is going to be, and I've seen this before as in Toronto and Halifax and others, it will be not based upon what's the lowest benefit in the region, our wage rate. It'll be based upon what's the highest. Right now we have, and I don't know why, but we have TransLink police paid higher than the rest of our police officers. You know immediately that those 3,000 officers are going to be demanding to be paid higher than TransLink police. Personally, I think they should be. But that's going to be a tremendous problem with regards to finances. So we really have to think of what that regional police model would look like. You have to ask, is it going to be too big? Can we manage it? We've got a lot of examples. The first career I had in the city of Burnaby was with the public health department. In those days, it was actually, we were city employees. Our course public health services were funded by the provincial government, and the services that the local council wanted, in addition to that, were funded by the local tax dollar. You couldn't have got closer to home. When somebody needed some help for home care or long-term care, they came down to their city municipality, and they saw usually the Victorian Order of Nurse in those days and the public health nurses who actually had kids in the school and lived in the community. They knew where they could go and sit down and get some help. Many of us in this room have gone through experiences of trying to have care for our parents. Where do you go? Even though I've been around a lot of years, I had difficulties getting help. The Fraser Health Authority is just one gigantic bureaucracy. Is that a bit more efficient model? I think you have to answer that yourself. You also have some other concerns like TransLink. TransLink is almost going to be, regional policing would be like a funding model like we have for TransLink. We write the check, you see it on your bottom of your property tax bill, but you have no say in how it's being spent. And like TransLink, who takes Delta's monies but cuts back our bus services, we can't get additional bus services. It all goes into funding projects in the downtown core. That's, in my opinion, what would happen with regional policing. Now, we have to look past what happened tragically, as Mayor Jackson and Mr. Opal stated, with the inquiries that have just been released and ones that were about 10 years ago. We have to look past that. We have to look, as Mayor Jackson stated, what's happened since that time. And we've had some great successes, really good successes. As Mayor Jackson stated, the old days of just having a file stay within the local police jurisdiction is gone. That electronic continuing access to records has been extremely helpful. I've been on ride-alongs with our police department, and I've seen the screen insofar as going to a property. That screen calls up a record, and that record isn't just for Delta, it's across the region. Police know what's happening across the region now, and it's so much better for their safety, and it's so much better for their ability to solve crimes and keep track of people that they should be keeping track of. We've also been working, and maybe it's because it's been kept too quiet, but we've had great success with integrated teams. And again, I had the privilege of going into an integrated team that went into our bars and went across the Lower Mainland. And we met at 11 o'clock at North Delta Police Center. And they were doing their debriefing. I looked around the room, and there was a Port Moody badge. There was some City of Vancouver badges there. There was Richmond RCMP. There was Surrey RCMP. There was Delta Police. And collectively, we went out as a team to all of the various bars that they were having problems with, starting with Maple Ridge and making their way back to Delta. And at the sites, as they went in, and they took up people with warrants, they showed strength. They showed that the gang members and the Hells Angels, that they don't run the place. Our police are there. And as we went into the various bars and nightclubs, the local police detachments were there, taking people away and doing their job. And it was a really motivating for me example of actually how we work together. And it's not just based upon your uniform. They're working together to solve crime in the Lower Mainland. Those are happening right now. We have the BC Integrated Gang Task Force. We have Municipal Integrated Emergency Response Teams. We have Combined Forces Special Enforcement Units. We have Integrated Municipal Police Auto Crime Unit. We have Integrated Border Enforcement Teams. We have Port Intelligence Units. And I don't know them all, and Chief Sesford could probably give you a longer list. I know there's a longer list, but we are working together now, and that's what I wanted to emphasize. So the real question, I think, isn't, we shouldn't just be looking at a regional model, but can we take the improvements we've done to date and move forward? Can we actually look at a model that allows for the integration of teams now? And what, in my opinion, is missing is a governance model where we under the in our local municipalities that are private forces, as Mayor Jackson said, we have local police boards, and it works great from ensuring there's accountability. If we could do another step and look at emphasizing and improving and more solidifying the integrated teams and having a local governance model similar to how we have our local board models, I think we can move forward and improve and enhance and give better tools to our police officers who need help. I just want to some on the costs again. 3,000 members. They're all going to have new uniforms. That's $1 million right away. They're all going to have to be redeckled. I mean, do we have to go to that step, or can we just take a step back and say, is there a hybrid model that we should be examining? Mayor Jackson, as you know, nobody has done the economics on regionalization. And we tried to do that when you were mayor, chair of Metro Vancouver. We had a very good team working together to look at some of the finances and gaps that we wanted to work on. I hope, Mayor Jackson, that type of task force could be established with the police and with city managers and directors of finance to really start laying out the costs for regionalization. And then we can weigh the outcomes versus those costs and also look at maybe there's a hybrid model we should move to. I don't think anybody that I've talked to is saying we should just keep doing the work on policing the way we're doing now, but let's not destroy the good things that we have going for us. Let's see if we can move to another model that will solve some of the problems that exist there. And again, the most important thing is giving tools to our police officers to continue to do their great job. Thank you.
Thank you, George. It has been brought to my attention that there are a number of police chiefs in the audience this evening, and we'd like to recognize you. If you could please stand up and let everyone see you. Thanks so much for coming out. Really do appreciate it. Our next speaker is Deputy Chief Constable Doug Lepard from the Vancouver Police Department. Doug Lepard has been a member of the Vancouver Police Department since 1981 and currently commands the Operations Division. He holds a BA in Criminology from Simon Fraser University and certificates from the Canadian Police College, Queen's, and Harvard. He has an extensive investigative experience and has lectured on related issues in Canada, the US, and Europe. He wrote a comprehensive review of the Vancouver area missing women serial killing investigation that was published in September 2010 after completion of the Picton criminal proceedings. He testified for 14 days at the Missing Women Commission of Inquiry, and his report was described in the inquiry report as perhaps an unprecedented self-examination by police and a rare exemplar of how you can do an internal autopsy and try to figure out what went wrong so that it won't happen again in the future. He has also written or co-written several articles and book chapters on assessing risk in stalking cases, best practices in police interviewing, preventing wrongful convictions, and serial killer investigations. He's been honored with numerous commendations and in 2008 was invested as a member of the Order of Merit for the Police Forces by Her Excellency the Right Honourable Michelle Jean, Governor-General of Canada. He was subsequently promoted to officer in the Order by Governor-General David Johnson in 2012, and in 2013 he was awarded the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal. Deputy Chief Constable Doug Lepard.
I think there are a few people afraid to clap in here, but so Chief Sessford, thank you for the invitation to the lynching. Not sure why I said yes, but so a few things, lots of stuff there, and it is great to see the passion that people have for the police. I saw it in the room earlier on with people coming up and speaking to Chief Sessford. People generally love their police. Whatever the community they live in, they love their police. And a lot of the things that Mayor Jackson said can be said of any, I think, of the police departments that are represented in here, big, small. We're all committed to the same things that Mayor Jackson talked about. Now, when I moved to Delta in 1983, Mayor Jackson was, she wasn't a mayor then, but she was already an experienced counselor. And I know that she is Delta's greatest advocate. I think her passion for the community is pretty clear. And so I applaud that. And I thank you for your dedication to public service. I hope that all the minds in the room aren't completely closed and are open enough just to hear some countervailing views. And I would just like to acknowledge my panel members here, Chief Sessford, who invited me, that I still may regret, but my other colleagues as well, and to Commissioner Opel, who I complain about being in front of that flock of lawyers for 14 days, but Commissioner Opel had to endure it for months and months, and I did read his whole report. I'd read it within a week of it being released on December 17th, and I do encourage anybody to read that important report. So let me start with this premise. If we were starting from scratch to design the best policing model for the Lower Mainland, no one would design what we have now. So I don't think many people will disagree with that, maybe some in this room. We've got this patchwork of RCMP and municipal forces serving 20 different communities, yet we're all part of one census metropolitan area, one contiguous set of communities with artificial jurisdictional boundaries like Boundary Road between Burnaby and Vancouver, and Scott Road between North Delta and Surrey. And there are others. They are artificial jurisdictional lines that criminals don't respect and don't care about, and some of them probably not even smart enough to know where they are. We are the last metropolitan area in Canada that does not have a metropolitan police force or a police force that serves the majority of the population in the metropolitan area. It's a situation that the BC Progress Board described a few years ago in one word as bizarre. It might not be a coincidence that despite the nation-leading crime reduction efforts in BC in recent years, which have been fantastic, our crime rates are still a lot higher than they are in Ontario. So we should pat ourselves on the back in every community for what we've done, but there is still a lot of work to do. And as people have said, what's the best way to do that? I hope that that's what we're open-minded about. I think that we should also be clear. Mayor Jackson asked, why did the VPD agree with that recommendation? Well, just to be clear, first of all, we think that it's important to be respectful of Commissioner Opel's entire report, not just cherry pick it. Secondly, we're not advocates for regional policing. That's not our job, but we have been on record in the VPD as supporting regional policing since before I became a police officer in 1982. I can remember Bob Stewart Sr., who was the chief until 1991, saying that when he joined the police department in 1955, his father, who served before him, told him, regionalization is just around the corner. You've come on at the right time. So there's been lots of talk about regionalization. The VPD has supported regionalization throughout its existence. But as I say, People are, well, why did we come out like it was something new? Well, because it's not our job to advocate for or against regionalization. We appreciate that is about individual communities, what they want, and it's a political decision. Our real involvement started in 2008. There was a forum held at the WAS Center. It was co-hosted by SFU and by the BC government. We said, yes, we'll participate. We prepared a discussion paper to inform the discussion and to provide some analysis. And it was purely that, for discussion. Since then, we have been so neutral in our comments that after Commissioner Opal's report came out and after my chief, Chief Chuse, gave his comments when asked, well, what's his view? And he said, look, it's a political decision, you know, that it's not our job to advocate for or against. And apparently his comments were so neutral that one reporter said, so just so I'm clear here, does that mean you're against regionalization? Despite the fact that we'd been on record for many years about it. So let me tell you how uncomfortable it is for me to be here today and look at my friends in the peanut gallery here in the front row here. And, you know, look, we have good policing in Metro Vancouver. We get along very well. We cooperate very well. We have good police agencies in BC. Chief Cessford has been a great partner to the VPD on issues and others on issues of a regional nature. Other chiefs in this room have been great partners in trying to work together with the structure we have around issues that cross boundaries, that cross jurisdictional lines. Why am I here tonight? I did not ask to come here. I didn't say, hey, Jim, I saw in the paper there's a forum going on. Could I come? Oh, you did. So. The only reason I'm here is because because we are all friends in this region, is Jim phoned and asked if I would, and Chief Chu was away, so he got out of it. So, you know, we're not here to try and change your mind. I'm here because, you know, we have some views, we've done some research, we have different perspectives on it. I'm here and happy to answer questions, not here to twist anybody's mind. I'm not a lobbyist. No one's paying me to do that. I have my own personal views. I've lived in small communities, big communities in the Lower Mainland. The Delta Police Department was my police department. I thought they gave great service. But the point is that we can't rely on collegiality to have effective policing on regional issues. It is great that we collaborate and we're cooperative and we get along and we can talk to each other, but there are structural barriers to success that without a common unified structure, we think that we will not be the best that we can be. We see miscommunications, we see mislinkages, we see delayed responses caused by our policing structure. Not because anybody doesn't want to do the right thing or cooperate or anything like that. It's the logistics of trying to get agreement when you have multiple agencies and get a consensus about how you're going to deal with something. It naturally creates delays and problems. But some people say, well, look, all crime is local. Well, a lot of crime is local and a lot of it isn't. In Metro Vancouver with these artificial barriers, we see gang violence that is not local, it is regional. We see bank robbers that we follow from community to community. Just 2 days ago, one of our police officers working on the west side happened to be listening to the UBC radio channel, and he heard that a bank robbery had just occurred, and he started hunting, and he found the bank robber. He would not have known about that bank robber. Prime is not going to tell him that a bank robbery had just occurred. It's a records management system. It's an electronic filing cabinet. But he was listening to the UBC RCMP channel, so he knew about the bank robber and he caught it. That information was never broadcast across the air into Vancouver. No one called Vancouver, said, hey, we just had a bank robbery in UBC. Maybe he's going to come your way, since that's the only way to go except to go in the ocean. So there's lots of times that sort of thing happens. There's incredible logistical challenges to collaborating, the many different organizations and unions and policies and all the different things. It's kind of ironic. I think it's the same. Every police chief and senior police executive in here probably has something that's similar, but I am briefed on every single significant incident that occurs over a 24-hour period. There is no significant incident in Vancouver that I don't know about. Yet we have about 800 police officers and civilian staff that work in our building at Gravely and Boundary, which actually looks into Burnaby. And I actually have no idea what's going on in Burnaby. I know more about what's going on in Burnaby than I know what I know about Burnaby because I read it in the newspaper. So yes, I could browse through the tens of thousands of police reports that are in the records management system, so I could try and figure out what's going on, but that's very different than the situal awareness I have and what Chief Rich has and what Chief Jones has and what Chief Lapine has about what's going on in their communities at any given moment. And like Lois Jackson described, is knowing exactly what's going on. Well, that's a scalable issue. We know that to the same extent in Vancouver too, and I have district commanders that are in charge of their areas and accountable and can turn those problems around on a dime as well. But again, I understand how much people love their police forces. Someone came up to us when we were talking before and said, "Fight hard, Jim, you know, we really love our police." Well, everybody does. That's great. That's great, and that means they're doing a great job, and the Delta Police Department is a great police department. And opposition to regionalization is quite normal in Ontario and Quebec, where there was lots of regionalization that went on. Lots of mayors were opposed to it. The public supported it. What does the public think in the Lower Mainland and on the South Island, where there's been the biggest call for regionalization? There have been multiple large scientific surveys done in the last 10 years, and every single one of them, the majority of the public supported having a regional police force. And in at least one of them, the majority of each individual municipality said, we think there should be a regional police force. So we need to be in sync with what people in our communities are thinking. Now, let's look at what's happened all across Canada. No one's suggesting that all the regional or regional-like police forces in the rest of Canada, hey, there's just something wrong with this model, we should break it up. You know, it's not working for us. My friend Norman Lipinski and my friend Jim Sesford, they were both senior executive officers in the Edmonton Police Force. I'm just speculating, I don't know this, but I'm betting that you guys didn't say, hey, instead of this precinct system, let's break Edmonton up. Let's have like multiple individual command structures and a bunch of different, you know, we'll make a bunch of different chiefs and all that sort of thing. I'm thinking not. Delta is three pretty distinct communities, right? We got Delta, Tawasin, and Ladner, and I don't think anybody is saying, hey, we ought to have three different police departments, three different communities, they have different expectations. The point is those expectations can be managed, as Mayor Jackson pointed out. The NYPD seems to have done a pretty good job, and they can have localized community policing, and they can also lead the country in driving down crime. We started off with an introduction that said we got people here that are proponents of community policing and proponents of regional policing, as if they're contradictory. They're not contradictory. I guarantee you that every police chief in Canada says we practice community policing in our organizations. In Chief Sesford's report, I think that is on the website, that talks about some recommendations around organizing policing, he talks about what they did in Edmonton around community policing, and that they were very successful when they implemented community policing in driving down crime. And I agree with them. Edmonton had a reputation in Canada as being the leader in community policing. The point is that you can have community policing in a small police department and a big police department. You can also have the opposite. You can have what I've seen in the US with some small police departments, and they're more like an occupying army. They all want to be a little SWAT team. And you can have big police departments that are extremely connected to their community. You can talk about turning issues around on a dime. The Chief Constable Chu and I sit on a committee with advocates for marginalized women in the downtown east side called the Sister Watch Committee. The chief and the deputy chief are sitting at a table at the Aboriginal Front Door Society in the 300 block of Maine with a community group talking about violence against women in the downtown east side of Vancouver. So these things are not mutually exclusive. So I think that my message is not about, hey, you need to switch to regional policing. What's the matter with you? My question, or my suggestion is just have an open mind. Have an open mind that there is a lot of information, and there's competing information, but ask yourself, can we do better? Maybe your answer is no, but can we do better by exploring different opportunities? Can we do better by reducing jurisdictional structural barriers? Can we be more efficient and effective? Can we reduce the number of silos? Can we increase communication? Can we hire police officers only once in the region rather than hiring police officers multiple times? Because there's a real cost to that you don't see that in the annual report. But for all the police agencies represented in here, Delta included, who have sent us trained police officers at your cost in numbers that far exceed the number that we lose, we thank you. You sent us some great police officers, and we didn't have to pay a cent while they were in training for their salary or anything else. Now, I wouldn't be saying that if we were losing more than we're gaining, but we don't. We gain more than we lose. Thank you. Regionalization experience in British Columbia. Well, it might surprise you to know that the Vancouver Police Department is a regional force. We used to be the Point Grey Police Department and the Vancouver Police Department. And we also police by MOU the Musqueam Nation in southwest Vancouver. But let's get a little bit more recent than 100 years ago, and we can go to my friend Chief Bob Rich's department, which in 1995 was actually two communities. It was Matsqui and Abbotsford, and they had two different police agencies, and they had to decide what they wanted to do, and they decided that they were going to amalgamate and create one police department, one municipality. So how have they done? Now, you should just probably leave the room at this point, because I don't want you getting a big pumpkin head, but the Abbotsford Police Department is an extremely well-performing police department. If you've followed the media, you'll know how successful they've been. In 2009, they were the murder capital of Canada. In a year later, they were being, written up in all the textbooks about how you can make a difference, and got to 0 murders. They have a reputation for being incredibly connected to the community. The chief himself is in every school in Abbotsford talking about how not to get involved in gangs, crime prevention, violence reduction. So they're incredibly engaged, and like most communities, people in Abbotsford love their police department. Bring the mayor in here and suggest that he breaks it up and create 2 different agencies and see how that goes over. Not going to happen. If Delta wants a certain level of service, which they do, great. Why can't we look at whether that can be built into a model and a formula that says you want that level of service, you want that number of officers, you want officers that are going to be committed to the community. I guarantee you there will be officers that want to spend their entire career in the community of Delta. Why can't you have all those things? I don't see a barrier to it. The RCMP has had success. They have detachment commanders, just like we have district commanders. They're very responsive to their communities, I am sure, can turn the problems around on a dime and all the rest of that, but they do report up through a unified structure. They are the Lower Mainland District Regional Police Service. That's what they call themselves. So not a true regional police force because they don't have all the contiguous communities. What if Delta could have everything that it has now, but also could have that enhanced and could have quicker, better access to the services like ERT or round-the-clock surveillance or whatever it is that it doesn't have the critical mass to provide? What else? We agree with Chief Sesford that the current model with standalone integrated teams is not the best answer. Effective policing relies on leveraging many resources in the police department with seamless communications. Silos are not optimal. Are you getting closer to me because I'm running out of time? I think Mayor Jackson took some of my time.
You're running about even.
We're running about even. Okay, well then I will make myself quicker. And I'll just say this, integrated units. Let me use as an example, and sorry for anybody that feels I'm picking on them, but we are the 2 biggest police departments in BC. Vancouver, Surrey. Last 4 years, homicides. Surrey's 4-year average for homicides is 15.25 homicides a year. They've got a population of 473,000. Vancouver's population, 652,000, that's 40% higher. We've got a 4-year average of 13.5 homicides, less than Surrey's. And it's going down quickly because we've been really engaged in a homicide prevention. VPD versus IHIT, and I know I'm going to make some enemies on this one, but I am going to qualify it. Last 3 years that we have data for, solve rate by IHIT, 47%, solve rate for VPD, 75%. Is that because we have better investigators or team commanders? No. Superb, talented investigators, team commanders in IHIT. It's a structural issue. So far this year, we're batting 100%, but we've only had 2 murders. In Surrey, as of this morning, they've had 10 now with the latest 2 that were found. And so when I hear Mayor Watt saying, well, I'm worried in a regional force we'll have resources sucked out in downtown Vancouver, I say, no, we're worried they're going to be going the other way. That's where the problems are. So yes, IHIT has great investigators and all that, but gang murders are very difficult to prevent. So we have a very proactive strategy that says we're not going to rely on solving murders. We're going to get out there and we're going to target those people that are the most likely to commit murders, and we're going to put them in jail for serious offenses, something less than murder, and we're going to take them out of circulation. So what's been the result of that? Last year we had 9 murders. That's the lowest number of murders that we have had since 1953 when we started keeping good records. And we're holding our own again. So our solve rate is good. It's improving. Does size matter? Well, what the point is, the 2 highest performing police departments in BC right now in terms of the crime severity index are the biggest police department, the VPD, and one of the smallest, led by Dave Jones, the New Westminster Police Service. Highest by far in terms of reduction in crime severity. The research against it. I know that he's edging closer, so I'm going to save it for questions that I'm going to get, other than saying, I hope people ask me about some of the research in regionalization.
Okay, don't forget, write that down, ask him about research.
Mr. Harvey brought up salaries and all that thing. That's where I'll finish and just say, look, that ship has sailed. We're already harmonized in BC. All municipal police officers make the very same. Thanks to union leaders like Bob Rich and his Tom Stamatakis in this room, they've done very well. Everybody's already harmonized. They're national comparators. They're not being compared to like the TransLink police or anything like that. I doubt they actually do make more when you examine the whole package, but we're already there. Does size matter again? Recent research in Canada says the higher the percentage of population that is included, that is serviced by one police department, the lower the crime is. I'll send you the research. There is a strong statistical correlation, and it's significant. So I'll just wrap up and conclude right here and hope some people ask me some good questions and say that I think that we all need to be thoughtful, like Mr. Opal was in making his recommendations in a 1,448-page report after hearing from many, many expert witnesses, after reviewing thousands and thousands of pages of literature and the evidence, is that we should at least inform ourselves and be respectful and have open minds about information on either side of the issue. At the end of the day, all of us as police leaders and politicians need to be clear. It's not about what we want. It's about delivering the best possible police service to our communities and keeping them safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Constable Doug Lepard. Our next speaker will be Assistant Commissioner Norm Lipinski from the RCMP E Division. Norm Lipinski is an accomplished police officer who was appointed to the position District Officer of the Lower Mainland District for the RCMP in February 2011. Prior to that, he'd served 32 years with the Edmonton Police Service, retiring from EPS with the rank of Deputy Chief, a position he held since 2007. He contributed to all areas of the EPS, spending the majority of his career in the area of operations and training. He possesses a broad base of experience in progressive policing practices, change management, and leadership. There is a whole bunch of stuff here. Being a humble man, he said, please don't put that stuff in, so I'm taking it out. He holds a Master's of Business Administration degree and a Bachelor of Law degree that he was called before to the Alberta Bar. This is the person who went to the Alberta Bar. In 2004, is a member of the Law Society of Alberta and the Canadian Bar Association.
Thanks, Brad, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to keep my comments short for a couple of reasons. One, because Doug took a lot of time, and two, because Chief Sesford here wants to speak and has a lot of things to say. I think it's been said before, but it bears repeating that in some regards, policing and politics don't mix. And so my position, generally speaking, is that we leave those decisions to the policymakers. However, I do believe that it's a good thing to get to know the facts, and the people that make the decisions and that pay the taxes have to know the facts. And that's what I bring here before you today, and I'm going to be succinct with that. I command the Lower Mainland District, which essentially means 18 detachments, and I report to 29 municipal governments or districts. And it's a very unique policing model, and it's been called a regional police service in many regards. It's not quite a true regional police service, because if you look in Ontario, York Regional, Peel, or Durham, it's one government. And then you have one police service. And that's not the case. One police service, RCMP, and 29 governments that I report to. But I want to focus in on Commissioner Opal's recommendation, and specifically Mr. Picton, who was arrested in the early 2000s, I think it was 2003, and convicted in 2007. And I think it's fair to say that since that time, a lot has been done collectively by all police agencies in BC, recognizing some of the issues that we as a profession faced, and we took great steps to mitigate any future similar event from happening again. We talked about PRIME, which is the information database, but there's more. There's something called the PIC, which is a Provincial Intelligence Center, because one of the issues with the Picton investigation was intelligence and information falling between the cracks and not sharing, et cetera, as you know. So with the Provincial Intelligence Center, we are now, with our colleagues here, talking about a real-time intelligence center, which is similar but an expanded sort of entity that'll provide a better service when we're talking about information to the front line. Since that time, we've tightened up our investigative protocol. There's something called major case management, and many more investigators are now very conversant with that. In the Lower Mainland, I'm responsible for 5 integrated teams. The most one that's relative to tonight's conversation is IHIT. And I take a different view than my colleague Doug in relation to crime and clearance rates. Crime is a very complex topic. There's so many entities involved of why crime occurs in any given community. Talk to the sociologists, talk to the police. Everybody's got their menu, and it is a menu because it's that complex. So we can't just say, look at comparing communities and say, why is that one more crime than this one, and say that perhaps it's because of the type of policing we have. Let me give you an example. Any community that has a mall, a large mall, and then on top of that has transit that makes it accessible throughout a very large region, we'll have a lot of crime. And I'm talking property crime to start with. And that drives up the stats. So there's many entities involved in the whole crime issue. Let me talk about clearance rates. It's been brought up over and over again. And yes, when you're having a bar fight and something goes awry and there's a death as a result, that's much easier to solve than a gang shooting. And I would think that in the Lower Mainland generally, in the entire Lower Mainland, we have a lot more gang members than other jurisdictions. And so as a result of that, trying to solve those difficult investigations, trying to use wiretaps, trying to use undercover operators, et cetera, it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of money. So clearance rates are affected by the complexity of the type of crime. Further, what we have, and you may have seen it in the media 2 months ago, there's now a national missing women's website. And we in the RCMP here in BC have a missing women's unit. So can we do better? Absolutely. But I think we've come a long way. And how do I know that? There's been a number of occurrences, 2 that I know of, where people have been charged with taking the lives of multiple women. So it is working, and it's as a result of the cohesiveness of all the agencies in BC. It's as a result of the lessons learned since 2003 or 4, and we're moving forward and we're continuing to refine. So as it's been said earlier on today, that we're talking about we have a model, and it is working, it's proven to work, and yes, we do have to refine and move forward, and there's many issues to address. But I'll leave you with this, that I've looked pretty hard, and I have yet to see a comprehensive review of regionalization in the Lower Mainland that specifically addresses 2 issues: cost and effectiveness. Cost and effectiveness. And in the cost category is everything from transition, labor, capital. It goes on and on and on. Secondly, I'll leave with you, when you're talking about regional policing across Canada and some of those agencies such as Peel Regional, et cetera, and there's a few, I've yet to find a real detailed, comprehensive review of any one of those agencies where somebody did before cost and effectiveness and then regionalize cost and effectiveness. I think we have to be informed before we make decisions. And I flagged that for you, that there is the issues of cost and effectiveness, and that right now we do have a very, very solid model, and we continue to refine that. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Our last panel speaker is Chief Constable Jim Sesford from the Delta Police Department. Jim Sesford is currently the Chief of Police of the Delta Police Department. He has over 40 years in policing, with 27 years spent with the Edmonton Police Service. In addition to his operational experience, Chief Sesford has been the president of both the Municipal Chiefs of Police and BC Association of Chiefs of Police, a member of various BC ACP committees, member of the steering committee that built the Organized Crime Agency of BC, now named the Combined Forces Special Enforcement Unit, chair of the CPRC in Ottawa, and he has lectured at the University of Alberta, UBC, and other universities and organizations across Canada and the USA. Chief Jim Sesford.
Thanks, Brad, and thank you all for showing up here tonight. It's important that we get together and we actually discuss the issues and know what we're talking about. I do need to say, and I say this, I do need to start off by saying, and I say with all respect, that we in Delta had actually sat back and thought about the missing women's recommendations, and we really looked closely at their recommendation relative to the mayor being chair of the police board and also to the whole issue of regionalization. We sat back and said, you know what, we're going to make an informed decision on this. It was not until such time as Vancouver Police Board and Vancouver Police Department both stepped out and said that they support regionalization, and regionalization was the way to go. It was at that point in time where we said, hold on, this is not working for us. We need to look at this a little differently. So, and thus, this is why we're here today and to have this discussion. I need to say that I previously worked in a large municipal police department. Edmonton Police Service is a large department, probably one of the largest in Canada, and I was there for several years. I was in charge of downtown division in Edmonton. The comment that was made earlier was that I doubt very much whether Edmonton would do the same thing that we're doing here now. I need to tell you that's exactly what Edmonton did. I was in charge of downtown division in Edmonton. The chief brought the 4 superintendents together and said, we need to get closer to our community. We need to break the city up into 4 quadrants. Jim Sesford, or to 5 quadrants, sorry. Jim Sesford, you're in charge of downtown division. He had the other superintendent sit down and he said to us, I want you to devise a policing plan that fits the unique needs of your respective communities. My community was downtown Edmonton, which was much different than North Edmonton, South Edmonton, West Edmonton, and thus I had to create my own policing model. So we did exactly what, in effect, what we've got here. The Edmonton Police Service record was outstanding at the time. We did great work, and I mean, we were really proud of what we had done. We were a strong community-based policing organization. We were surrounded by several other municipalities, St. Albert, which is a huge community, Sherwood Park, and Leduc. And not once. We had, and I need to tell you this, we had 5 Stanley Cups in Edmonton, and we had 5 Stanley Cup riots in Edmonton. Never once did we ask the Sherwood Park RCMP, the St. Albert RCMP, or anyone else for that matter for any assistance. We handled it on our own. We had the resources to deal with what we were dealing with, and we took care of business. We didn't consider regionalization at all at that time. I now have had the opportunity to work in a medium-sized police department with the Delta Police Department, and I can tell you that we're not much different here in Delta than what we were in Edmonton. Same type of problems, only much more of the same type of problem, I guess, in Edmonton. Based on my experience in policing, and I've been around for a long time, obviously, you can tell by looking at me, I don't support a general amalgamation of police services, but I do support an organized, specialized policing approach to deal with complex cross-boundary matters involving gang homicides, organized crime, outlaw motorcycle gangs, and major drug and technology investigations. A general amalgamation would likely increase the gap between the police and the community. That's not what we need at this particular time. The police and community need to come together. The public need to trust and have confidence in their police, and that's not the situation right now. That trust and confidence is waning in some respects. We need to get closer to our communities. Studies do show that the resources in smaller police agencies would be likely deployed to higher crime areas and would likely result in less police presence in Delta, as an example, a smaller community. I spoke too at the WASC Centre that Doug had spoken about earlier, and Chief Vern White from the Ottawa Police Department spoke at the WASC Centre. And Vern White had just talked about the regionalization or amalgamation of the Ottawa Police Service, Nepean, Gloucester, and a couple of others. And Vern White, he was quite candid in saying that this worked really, really well for Ottawa, and that we had a lot of resources to draw from with the Ottawa Police Service, but that Nepean, Gloucester, and some of the other communities were not satisfied with the policing presence that they had because the resources were being deployed to the bigger problems, and the smaller communities weren't getting the attention that they needed. Other than that, I mean, they still have that regionalized model, and they're still working ahead with it. Certainly, there would be a loss of control over the community, over our community and the police. We have our mayor as chair of the board, and we have 6 members of the community who represent the community on the police board. So we're held accountable. We had a police board meeting today that went on for about 5 or 6 hours. I talked about budgets, I talked about policing, I talked about a whole lot of issues, and I'm being held accountable at every turn. We have to police to the unique needs of our community. In Delta, we're particularly unique in that we have North Delta, we have Ladner, we have Tawasin, we have Tawasin First Nations, we have a large industrial area, and we have a large farming community. We do police each one of these communities differently. Many of our police officers, our civilian staff, and approximately 350 volunteers are from our community. We've purposely looked toward recruiting Delta citizens in our department. They've been educated, coached, mentored, and they have pride of ownership in Delta. And they've served us very, very well. And Doug, I do need to talk to you about our Delta members or other police members from other police agencies going to Vancouver. I'm not sure if I should say thanks or not, but Kieran Feenan, who's sitting at the table as our media relations officer, came to us from Vancouver Police Department. He and several others came to us for Vancouver. So it goes back and forth, and I think that you'll find that we see that. We had members go to Vancouver that actually asked to come back to Delta. because of the policing model, and we wouldn't take them back, quite frankly, because they had left. So that's the way it works. There's been some commentary about no call too small, and those comments are made in somewhat of a menacing, frivolous kind of tone, and it's kind of suggesting that that's kind of Bush League policing. That's come up a few times. I know the mayor alluded to it. It's not a frivolous statement. We will attend to all calls here. We go to break-and enters. We go to theft from autos. We go to internal thefts. We go to those calls because that's what we're here for. That's what the taxpayers pay money for. They expect their police to show up and attend. The other part of this is, some police agencies are not responding to those calls. They're not responding to some of those minor crime calls. And we often talk about, in the police community, we talk about intelligence-led policing. But if we're not responding to the calls, if we're not gathering the information, I certainly would question about how relevant our intelligence is if we're not getting the full picture. The threshold for a chronic or a prolific offender in Delta is much lower than it is in some of the other jurisdictions that we're talking about here today, which means that the bad guy in Delta has done a lot more, in Vancouver, as an example, has done a lot more trouble than those that are in Delta. We need to get at these people before they get out of control. They become much more chronic and much more prolific if, in fact, we increase the threshold. I'm not certainly criticizing anybody's policing models here, and I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute or so, but I want to make that clear. It's important that we listen to our community. Our citizens in Delta and most of your communities, they don't see gangland killings or organized crime as being their first police priority or something that actually has an impact on their personal lives. In Delta, our citizens are concerned about truck traffic, they're concerned about speeding vehicles, and they're worried about theft from autos. Those are their big issues. We do have to be concerned about the more serious, complex matters like organized crime, gang killings, and that's where the specialized policing comes into play, and that we form a specialized policing unit that deals with some of those more complex and higher profile investigations. Interesting, I just want to make a few comments on the Missing Women's Inquiry report. There were 60, first off, I need to say, that was a terrible tragedy. That was a terrible tragedy. Those women were being murdered, they were being assaulted, abused, and the police never stepped up to the plate and did their job. And we're all responsible for that. We should be ashamed. We need to do a heck of a lot better than that. And one of the things that caught my attention in that whole inquiry was the fact that Mr. Opal found that there was a lack of leadership. And in fact, he says, this is his quote, there was a want of leadership by the police agencies involved in the missing women's investigation. A want of leadership. The police leaders that were interviewed during this inquiry talked about the fact that they had a passive style of leadership. They talked about the fact that they weren't micromanagers, that it was not their job to micromanage their people. Let me say this about that. We've had several homicides in Delta, and I have my fingers on the pulse of every one of those investigations, those homicide investigations, as does my management team. There's not one thing that happens in those investigations that passes through the cracks. If you're a police leader that's employing passive leadership style, when your department is involved in these types of investigations, you need to move on. Because people get killed when you're sitting there not paying attention to what's going on. I can tell you one other thing. I'll give you an example of how this all works when we're working together, if we're working together properly. A couple of years back, there were two young people that were killed at, I think it was 33rd and Granville, or 53rd and Granville or something. Anyway, they were stopped at a red light. Somebody pulled beside them, and they gunned these two guys down, and they were killed. It was obviously a gang homicide. As soon as I heard about that, and knowing where we are with this gang problem, I got on the phone, I called Jim Chu, and I called Al McIntyre, who's in charge of the RCMP, and said, and this is not about me being a hero, but it's about us being not passive leaders, but people who are getting on top of these things. I called Chu and McIntyre and said, we got to get together, we have to come up with a plan, and we have to deal with this gang stuff before it gets out of hand. What came out of that, what we struck was a unit that was called the Violence Suppression Team, that ultimately became part of the Integrated Gang Task Force. That's where you got police leaders that are putting their heads together and coming up to solve major problems. And that's how it needs to work. We can't have passive leadership. And I'm not sure, well, I'm going to say this. Regionalization does not create leadership. Regionalization doesn't create leadership. And we need to do a heck of a lot better than what we did. I can assure you that, well, first off, another thing I'll say here is that it's my opinion that the police executives that I work with, this motley-looking crew that's sitting in front of me here, that they are outstanding leaders. And there's certainly not a want of leadership or passive leadership style with any one of these leaders. You've heard Doug, you heard how passionate he is. Does he look like a passive leader to you? Absolutely not. The leadership style has changed in some respects, and I can also tell you that I've worked with most of the mayors in the Lower Mainland, and they believe that they have outstanding leaders working in their respective police agencies. They're very happy with their police executive and with their respective police services. They don't see a need, from my discussions, to create a regionalized police organization. Many advances have occurred since the missing women's investigation, and we've talked about Prime, and we've talked about the radio system. One other one that we should talk about is a system that's called VICLAS, and that's the Violent Crime Linkage Analysis System. And that's a system whereby all police departments across Canada provide information that they have on serious investigations, homicides, sexual assaults, very serious, complex investigations. They fill out a booklet, they provide it to the VICLAS organization. VICLAS analyzes all of that information, and they look to identify serial offenses, serial offenders, and with that information, they then assist us in tracking these offenders. I'm proud to say that the police in British Columbia, that's all of us, RCMP, all of us combined, have a 97% compliance rate with the VICLAS system. That's huge. I'd suggest it's probably one of the biggest in Canada. That is a clear indication that we're all working together, sharing information in the best interests of our respective communities. So I think it's important that we understand that. I'm just going to wrap it up here really quickly. Most importantly, we've done all the things that we need to do to move forward since the missing women's investigation. You know, Sir Robert Peel spoke about the fact that the police are the public and the public are the police. And the only difference is that the police are charged with a full-time responsibility for community safety and security, a duty that's incumbent on each and every one of us in our communities. It's not the police job to keep your community safe. It's every one of us in this room. It's your responsibility as well to help work toward keeping this community safe. If you believe at the end of the day that regionalization is the way to go and that's what we need to do, I'm into that. I'm okay with it. It's been said that the reason that these police chiefs don't want regionalization is that they'll lose their jobs. I can't speak for them, but I'm telling you that I'm not just starting my police career. And so if regionalization comes about, the paycheck would probably look pretty good for me. But I committed to keeping Delta safe, and I committed to doing the best thing in the interest of public safety here. And I believe that community-based policing with a specialized policing organization is the way to go. I'm not against regionalization. General amalgamation, I'm opposed to. A specialized, blended model of policing is the way that we need to go. We need to provide some governance. We need to put some organization into a specialized policing unit, and that makes us all much more effective. The mayors and the communities can keep their respective chiefs under control and provide governance to them, and we can have a provincial body that oversees a specialized policing organization. I also need to say that, Mr. Opel, in 1994, you had said that your comment in that closing the gap was that I suggest that our smaller cities and communities do not have large enough police departments or budgets to adequately provide for specialized policing services. You went on to say that serious crime must be addressed through larger integrated investigation sections that have personnel with the expertise and the equipment required to solve major complex cases. Basically what you said in 1994, I'm reiterating again today and saying that, yeah, the smaller agencies can't do this on their own. We need a more regional integrated specialized policing model that's going to provide the policing service that we need. In a paper that we wrote, I should say, and I'll wrap it up with a statement. We had talked about Vancouver and other agencies not really committing to any kind of a policing model. In 2000, I was the president of the BC Association of Chiefs of Police. All police agencies, including Vancouver, Delta, all the agencies here in the RCMP, sat down and we drafted what we called as a 5-year policing plan. And that policing plan committed each of us to community-based policing under the community-based policing model. And we said that what we needed to do is we needed to integrate or regionalize where and when necessary, but that we should not do general amalgamation. We committed to that at that time. So I think that I'm not sure if our position has changed, and I think that what we need to do is, I guess for us as police chiefs, and we've said this many, many times, is that this is not our decision. We can just provide advice and counsel. Ultimately, this is a political decision that will have to be made at some point in time, and we're just here to assist and do whatever it is that we can do to help you make the right decision. I'm going to conclude by saying to all of the police chiefs, thank you for coming to the panel. Thank you for being here. And to all of you, what a wonderful turnout. And it's hopefully now we'll get into some questions and we can clarify some issues for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Sessford. So we are going to take a short break. We figured that you're all here because you heard there were refreshments being served tonight. So we're going to take 10 minutes. If you have questions, if you could please bring them up to us here. If you have a question you want to use the microphone for, please let us know. Washrooms are out the door. Take a left. Ladies, then men. Okay, we'll see you back here promptly, please, in 10 minutes. Thank you. What's that? Yeah, I saw that. Hey, so aren't those the greatest cookies in the world? Yeah. Joan, bring them down. So, as you know, this is the time for some questions with our panel. And we have been receiving some emails, and we will have some mics available. I'm looking for Melissa. So our folks at the back here, if you could put up your hands again, our team of volunteers that are helping out. Okay, so if you have a question, how are we going to do this, Melissa?
Jules, in the back of the microphone.
Yeah?
Is going to be
Okay, so...
A number of people have already identified that they have the questions, so we can push that.
Okay, so here's the deal. We got half an hour. Okay, so let's not make them, let's have a lot of questions and not just one. Okay, so Jules is on top of this.
Hello, my name's Aaron Menny. I'm a construction contractor, self-employed from Richmond. My question is to Mr. Lipinski. I consider myself kind of a Noam Chomsky of Richmond. I don't know if you are familiar with him, but I pick up little snippets of information and spin them around in my head, and I regurgitate them. And something is puzzling me and bothering me with information that I've picked up about modern technology, and it's concerning weapons systems. And I'm very concerned about this, and I've been reading about it, and it's in today's paper in the province. One person drove by another person and lasered the person. I don't know if you read the province today, but that person was wounded by a laser. My question is, what is happening with the modern systems with the RCMP, such as what I'm reading is something called directed energy weapons systems and microwave assault technology.
Could I tell you, could we take this offline? I think we should stay with the focus of this evening, and I'll chat with you offline, and
sure.
we'll discuss that. Fair enough? Can we do that? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so where is our Jules? Thank you. So we're going to take 2 or 3 questions from the floor, then we've got some email questions that come in. We'll do that. Okay.
Hi, Will Rogers. I'm a recent property owner now in Delta, but I actually live in Surrey, so I've got a perspective on a little bit of this. But I've also been an emergency worker in the Lower Mainland for the last 26 years. And my service, the ambulance service, was taken from a patchwork of organizations, private entities in 1973 and turned into a provincial system, which has worked, as far as I can tell, pretty well. I can work out of my own station in Cloverdale, but I can pick up an extra shift in Delta, in West Van, in Abbotsford, the downtown east side, UBC, anywhere if there's one available. I found that this learning curve has helped me in my career tremendously. This is something that I bring to my job and with me wherever I go every day that I put on my uniform. I respect Mayor Jackson's speech tremendously, but with all due respect, any mayor would say the same thing. There's highs and lows with every department. There's risk to every change. What's the old adage? An adult in change is an adult in crisis. Right? It's scary to change. This is something that I think is going to happen someday, no matter what we say here. I think the efficiencies that come with it, $1 million for uniforms can be absorbed over combined training, combined purchasing power. Those are the things we see in our service, and it's still working strong today. My question is do you think this is inevitable, that it's going to come to this? And I think it's a positive step. One team pulling in one direction under one banner with one head at the top.
Is that a question to somebody or just?
Just the panel. Do we think it's inevitable?
Is this like raise your hands? It's an inevitable or it's not? One word answers all the way around, I guess. I don't know. How would you do that?
No,
Is
it's
it
not inevitable. Oh. I don't think it's inevitable.
I'll answer.
Okay, so no.
My own view is it is inevitable with some modifications. Now, I'm not privy to any kind of inside policy or anything of that sort. Reason I say that is that the public in fairly significant numbers appears to favor a regional type of policing structure. Those have been the survey results in the last number of years, and everywhere I've gone since we released a report, I haven't had anybody say anything other than we favor a regional police force. However, having said that, I think it's at that time it's for the municipalities like Delta to step to the plate to ensure that there is some type of community-based policing and some type of decentralization wherein there are precincts that are located in the jurisdictions, and so that the proud history of the Delta Police Force is not obliterated because it's had a great historic success over the years. So I think there's room for some kind of compromise. Now, again, those are only my own opinions, and I may or may not be accurate. So.
Thank you. Any other panel members wish to comment?
I'll just jump in and say I think that there is going to be some change, obviously, and I'm not sure what that would look like. I do need to say to you, though, and I will be very clear in saying to you that I do not know of a profession anywhere that has gone through more change than the police profession. And I can tell you that we have gone through changes in technology, changes in oversight, and a whole lot of things. We've had to adapt to change on a regular basis. The law changes for us every day. So we're a whole lot different. And so your comments about change don't work that well for me, quite frankly, and that there isn't anybody that's more adapted to that. And it's not about us being resistant to change. It's about us making change for the right reasons. You don't change just for the sake of changing. You don't change just just for the sake of change. You do it for the right reasons, all right? And if you can convince me that regionalization, that we need to do a full general amalgamation is the way to go, I'll buy into that for sure. I'm not afraid of change at all.
Okay, thank you. Next question.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is William Gibbons, and I'm very pleased to come here tonight. I have been interested in policing since as early as 1997 when I organized Greater Vancouver's first public presentation on policing the internet. I brought in a top RCMP criminal investigator who'd been involved in international investigations to speak to computing professionals. So I suppose that's the ultimate regionalization. But I've gone on. In 2002, I was approached by the Combined Forces Missing Women's Task Force to be lead consultant on the evidentiary division, providing evidence to Willie Picton's defense team. As is often the case in my work as a consultant, I talked myself out of that job. I told them that I felt that they might endanger the investigation by changing horses midstream. So they followed my advice, and I didn't even send them a bill for that. But I want to talk tonight about a case, very recent case in the last month, where I believe proper police investigatory and professional standards investigation procedures have been properly followed. And that's the case of one Mr. Booker, a 74-year-old man who was assaulted in Surrey Memorial Hospital in April 2010. Within 24 hours, 2 criminal investigations took place, one involving an RCMP officer in Division 1 of Surrey RCMP, the other involving a TransLink officer who happened to be on the scene and got involved. The result was Crown laid 2 criminal assault charges and 1 charge of assault with a weapon. Now, Mr. Booker was a vulnerable, elderly, low-income person with other health issues. Without any complaint on his part, a criminal investigation was conducted. Without any complaint on his part, professional standards investigations were conducted. 3 use of force reports were produced. Video forensic evidence was produced, and a report on its analysis was produced. In addition, a report on the tasering of Mr. Booker in a hospital emergency room was produced. This brought us to court March 6th of this year in criminal court in Surrey, where a stay of proceedings under the charter was entered. Now, Mr. Opal, having been a judge, might be able to attest the amount of court time it took to bring our system to the point where neither the officers who were charged nor the victims' rights and dignity were served by the system. Still, I will stand up and say the proper procedure was followed. And the reason I know about that is because when my own 89-year-old mother was assaulted in Vancouver General Hospital emergency, Mr. Lepard himself and his chief refused me a criminal investigation.
Is there a question?
Mr. Rich, who I spoke to in 2008.
Okay, sir, if we don't have a question.
And refused to investigate.
Thank you.
Mr. Opal, who I spoke to before my mother died.
Excuse me.
And after she died, at the opening of your inquiry, refused anything but personal
Excuse me, sir.
Against me,
Sir.
my elderly mother.
Excuse
me.
me.
I demand a proper criminal investigation, Mr. Lepard, and I say, you, sir, and you, sir, and you, Mr. Rich, who haven't even got the guts to turn around and face me, lack integrity, lack professionalism, and lack the guts to do your
please.
job. And an 89-year-old woman is assaulted by the police. Now, that's the truth of it. And Mr. Lipinski, I'd be happy to speak to you about that.
We'll now take a, excuse me.
I've had my question.
Okay, so we have some Twitters. And I guess this is just a general to the panel. Thank you. Will cities have any control over policing costs if the force is regionalized? So will the individual communities have any, will they have any control? Mayor Jackson?
This is a very major concern to me. I view the regionalization that we've been talking about, strict amalgamation, the same way I view TransLink service. And I think Mr. Harvey mentioned it. There's a line on your tax bill You have no way of increasing, decreasing, or changing that number, and there's no way of increasing or decreasing or changing the services that you can provide to your community. And that's the way I viewed it. It's very similar, as, for a total amalgamation of a TransLink system.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we'll take one more from the email. I think this is email. Nope, this one's Twitter also. Is the thought that RCMP members would patch over? What happens if they don't? Where would the officers come from? So I don't know what the, is that a policing term, patch over? Okay.
Yeah, I think what he's getting at is if you regionalize, would members from police officers from other jurisdictions, whether within the Lower Mainland or across Canada, would leave their respective police agencies and come over to the regional police force? Difficult question to answer. And when you're talking about where you're going to get the people from, you'd have to recruit all across Canada, whether it be first-time police officers or experienced police officers. And that is in fact happening now with agencies across Canada. But it'd be a recruiting issue, yes.
Okay, thank you. We have a question here. Oh, here first and then yourself, okay? And microphone. Please, if we can make the questions to the panel specifically. Thank you.
This is to, pardon me. Anyways,
Speak down to it.
pardon? Anyways, this question is to the panel, in a sense. Like, my name is Chuck Doche, and I've lived for over 45 years in Delta. And during all those years, my experience has been very good with the police force and the way it's run. And over those years, different things have occurred that made the force better. Not only in the locations where the police stations are, but the response time. And I do believe that it is 100% possible to continue to have a Delta police force with units working in another section that covers, police issues like gang, multiple murders across various municipalities. Now, I hear various comments that Commissioner Opal has made, etc. And what I get upset at a little bit about those situations is, and I'm only responding to things I read in the newspaper and follow-up things after you submitted your report. Example, Seattle has approximately the same population sort of as Vancouver. But down there, the Green River murder cases, which added up to be 50 or 60 women, they didn't solve that if it was one big police force. That was a lucky break when they pulled the man over in his Corvette and did the various things. So that's not very good proof of what you can expect from a really large police force.
So your question to the panel is what?
And at the panel, the report and stuff like that, they call it the missing person report. The reality is a huge amount of women, doesn't matter whether they're working on the streets or where they live,
Question, please, sir.
disappeared. And I don't think that would have been solved with a big regional police force. If I look at the example of what the Vancouver leadership back then and the RCMP doesn't convince me of that at all. So I really think,
Is there a question, sir?
yes, that we would be better off having a Delta police force working with a specialized committee for, intensive crime.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, we have another via email. How can we discuss regionalization of policing without amalgamating all of the cities and communities of the Lower Mainland? And that's just a general question, I guess. So does anyone want to take that one on?
I remember in Ontario and on the East Coast when all of the cities and towns around Toronto, for instance, Sudbury, Carleton, Ottawa, Carleton, and so on, they were all separate. And they did regionalize all the governments. Why? Because they said it was going to be cheaper. Well, it wasn't. It was a lot more money in the long run. And the people on the outlying area, and I know this about Sudbury because that's where I come from, they can't get a pothole filled. When they had their own, they had their own, I guess, their own little council that they looked after and they paid for. They could have people come out and talk to those in the community. Regionalization, governmentally, at least didn't work for the little people that I knew where I came from.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the panel? Mr. Graham?
If this is on, yeah, good, thanks. Sure, I've policed a few communities in my time also, and Jim and I have known each other for many, many years. I guess the question is partly to former Justice Opal. I got a feeling that history will be very kind to your report. I think that we're going to look back on this years from now and say it was a landmark decision. It's going to take a little while, so please don't be frustrated with us that there's a lack of action. There is. And I'm biased about this, I make no bones about it, but I think regionalization is inevitable. It's coming. It will be forced to because of the pressures of costing. You take 4 dogs or whatever it is in Delta, the 5 the Mounties have next door, X number in Vancouver. You could pool them all and look at different shift structures and just come up with better modeling. So, but I think then, and as Stephen Point carried at the last Chiefs meeting, carried the message from your inquiry, and he's been appointed by the government to do some of the work. And it was a marvelous message for us to be positive, to work with you, to see if there's some change that we can make to make what happened, the things you studied, never ever happen again. And that's the goal of everybody. And I think if you're looking for a place as a test case for regionalization, the Lower Mainland is a tough sell. Why not look at Victoria? It's when you get off the ferry terminal and you drive to Victoria, 22 kilometers, you go through 3 comm centers. Okay, 13 municipalities, 4 municipal forces, and 3 RCMP detachments. We all get along. We're all the best of colleagues. We solve lots of crime, but lots of examples where regionalization would be so much better. So, anyway, please be patient. That was what I was saying. I sensed the frustration when you spoke, and hang in there, because believe it or not, I think it was an amazing report. I've read it twice, and it really hit home for a lot of us.
Thanks, Chief Constable Jamie Graham. I've respected you for all the years that you've been with the RCMP and chief here, and now you're chief in Victoria. But you make a good point about Victoria, and nowhere was that more evident than the Oak Bay killings in 2007, where a man killed his whole family, and one of the women who were killed was, before she died, was phoning various detachments, various police forces, and no one got there in time. It was half an hour by the time it happened in Oak Bay, but it was a classic example of what can go wrong if there isn't communication between various police forces. So, yeah.
Okay, we're going to take just 2 last email and Twitters that have come in. And of course, we did promise you that you would be out of here by 9:30, and my contract's up at 9:30, so I got to leave anyway. So, unless we can work something out. What is the panel's opinion of the possibility of a 2-tier policing system involving regionalization of specialist sections, such as forensic, ERT, major crime, criminal intelligence, with community police services being maintained by local units?
I'll just jump right at that and say that that's probably what we've been advocating the most for, is that specialized policing agency. And I think that's what the question is. I believe that we should have our respective police agencies and have that specialized policing agency, and that we need to put some more structure in organization and governance to that model. I think that would serve us well. So, I think that's the direction we need to go. And I agree with Jamie that we've got to make some changes. I'm not sure. I have a different opinion, of course, as to what those changes should be. But I do think that we do need to do some things differently, and I think that's a great model for us to work toward.
So, is this thing on?
That, maybe move a little closer, Doug.
Oh, they turned it on for me. Usually people can hear me. So I'll just take a different view and say that some of the things that Mayor Jackson and Chief Sesford talked about earlier, which really resonated and I think resonates with all the police chiefs in the room, is about the importance of police officers knowing their community and knowing what's going on, knowing who in the zoo. And what is contradictory about saying, well, we're going to have our police officers that are in uniform to do the, that responding to calls and that sort of thing, dealing with those community issues, but we're going to specialize everything else and we're going to hive them off and put them somewhere else and put them in another building. Well, that's what happens to a large extent now, and I'll just tell you based on my experience, and I think that the evidence bears it out, is that crimes are solved not by a specialized group of investigators who go off and work in another building. They're solved often because of the seamless integration within an organization that draws on the experience of officers on the street who may even be brought in to work on that investigation, where there is excellent communication. It happens better within a single organization, however big or small that organization is. The success that Jim talked about around their last murder investigation, which was a very scary thing for the community, I'm sure had a lot to do with the investigators being able to seamlessly communicate with the police officers on the street and the knowledge that they have, not them being off somewhere else and really just creating another silo that impairs effective communication. It impairs good cooperation. It's not the way that we have found that we have been successful in, for example, dealing with the problem of gang violence in Vancouver and pretty much eliminating our gang homicides by being very proactive and leveraging all the resources in the organization, not just saying it's your job or even saying the silo within, it's your job in homicide to make this go away. No, we say it's a departmental priority and everybody has to be involved in solving this problem. In the same way that when Bob Rich was a fellow deputy and said the whole department needs to be involved in addressing problems in the downtown east side of Vancouver. Everybody's involved. It's not one unit's responsibility. And so I think that there's been lots of improvements made, and kudos to the province for adding a lot more money into policing that's allowed like provincial units to be created and integrated units. It's increased the capacity of policing. It's allowed more focus on problems, but could it be better? I think that it could be better, and it is not. It addresses the problem somewhat, creating this new agency that Jim has proposed, but it's still another silo that takes away from seamless communication between police officers in an organization who are focused on one priority, and all the resources and priorities of that organization are leveraged towards that goal. That's where success has been shown.
Okay, thank you. Well, folks, it's almost time for us to say goodnight. So I believe there are some closing remarks from Mayor Jackson. I'm going to say thank you very much. You've been great, and thank you to the panel. It has been fantastic. And Mayor Lois Jackson.
And once again, ladies and gentlemen, there are thank yous all around here tonight. And I want to thank, firstly, Commissioner Mr. Waliopol, and thank him so much for being here tonight. Mr. George Harvey, the CAO for Delta. Deputy Chief Constable Doug Lepard, Vancouver Police Department. Thank you, Doug, for being here. Assistant Commissioner Norm Lipinski from the RCMP. Thank you so much for your contribution. And of course, Chief Constable Jim Sesford from the Delta Police Department. I also want to thank our moderator, Brad Cooper. Brad, thanks so much for being here and doing this for us. I know you're a busy guy, and we appreciate it. The staff of the Town and Country have been fabulous. The staff from Delta Police, Corporation of Delta, all the councillors, all the police board members that are here from all over, all the visiting police personnel and the police chiefs, thank you so much. And Jamie Graham came all the way from the island. Thank you, Jamie, for being here.
We have Glacier Media, Delta Cable, the attendees, and so on. You know, ladies and gentlemen, this meeting is really not the end of this process, I don't believe. It really is kind of a beginning of the dialogue, and that's what tonight was, a dialogue for those who really care to come together and collectively solve the many problems that we face together. And so you may ask, well, where are we going to go next? Well, I think what I'm going to do is ask my colleagues, the other mayors from the municipal police area, if they'd like to get together. If the chiefs from the municipal forces would like to get together, and our CAOs, and let's sit down and talk about where we are and how we're going to move forward, and particularly with the governance model, the finance, and the cost effectiveness. And I think someone said that a little bit earlier. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming out tonight. This is how things come forward. With, you know, we get new ideas from people speaking at these meetings, and thank you for caring about your community, our community, and for all our people. Thank you very much. We hope to do this again. Thank you.